Hey guys, so I wanted to come on here and talk about this story that I've been meaning to get to about this vile white woman in South Africa who received jail time for referring to the Africans as their version of the N-word. Before I get into that, I want to say sorry to you guys. I had to take yesterday off from videos. It was my mom's birthday, so we had to go out and deal with her birthday. But so I didn't get on there. I didn't get to do a live stream, but I'm going to do a Patreon exclusive live stream. I'll try to get that done later today, and you guys can tell me what time better works for everyone. But so the story is about a white woman in South Africa who went on a racist rant. The rant was recorded, and subsequently she ended up getting, some reports are saying 2 years, some are saying 3 years in prison for that racist rant. The reason why this is important is because it shows Africans taking a stand and defending themselves against racial terrorism, which is something that Black people globally really need to do. We all know that the South African government recently decided that they were going to take back the stolen land and distribute it to the rightful owners from white people. So they're just on a campaign trying to make themselves out to be victims, okay? When in reality, they're going around victimizing everyone else. The problem is very few people are actually standing up to them and giving them consequences for their behavior. That's something that really needs to be done in this country. And the reason it needs to be done today in this country is because they're looking at, like, they just put out a report for anybody who watched my live stream the other day. They put out a report. It was on the doctors, and we all know this because I've been reporting on this, and Phil from Advise Show and a number of other people have been reporting on this. But in 40 years, that report said that they'll be completely infertile. Now, people might be looking at the 40-year timeline, but you have to understand they've also looking at a massive opioid epidemic. They're dealing with regular white-on-white crime. Then they have mass shootings, and then they have the women being infertile too. So they're staring at their extinction, and they like to think and plan 100 years into the future. I know Black people don't like to do this. We have a problem with not planning and ignoring the reality that we live in. But they're planning hundreds of years in the future. They're looking at their demise coming up, okay? So right now they're ramping up their aggression. You can best believe that they're planning to exterminate a large amount of Africans as well as African Americans, because they would prefer to make everyone else go extinct than they be the minority and risk having happened to them what they've done to other people. So they're trying to thwart what a lot of people believe is karma at this point. So we have to understand that they're going to ramp up their violence. They're going to be planning things. They're already planning things. I want Black people to get this into their mind. You're not in a situation where you can sit around and just wait on white Jesus. You're in a war zone, and apparently white Jesus is not coming, or else white Jesus would have been here. Okay? Now let's get into this clip, and then I'll get into a little bit more of the story.
And now to South Africa, where courts in the country has jailed a white woman for yelling racist abuse at Black police officers. Vicky Momberg, an estate agent, was sentenced to 3 years in prison for utterances she made against a Black police officer in 2016. The Black officers have been trying to assist her after she was robbed on the outskirts of the main city, Johannesburg. The police ruling is the first prison term imposed in South Africa for verbal racial abuse, as people convicted of the same crime previously have always been fined.
Absolutely, Jerry. And commenting on the unprecedented verdict on television, the Justice Minister, Michael Masuta, felt that it would have a deterrent effect. It was about intensifying and toughening the fight against racism by imposing even tougher sanctions. Details in this report.
A South African court has jailed a former real estate agent to prison for 3 years with 1 year suspended for racist abuse. Vicky Momberg is accused of using a derogatory word against a black police officer 48 times. Her lawyer says she was not in a normal state at the time, as she had just been a victim of a smash and grab robbery. Her alleged racist rant went viral on social media when she was caught on video hurling insults at black officers trying to assist her after she was robbed in the outskirts of Johannesburg in 2016. The lawyer also indicated she would appeal against the conviction and sentence. If the appeal fails, she will be the first person to be imprisoned in South Africa for racist abuse.
Well, with us now to weigh in on the existing racial attitudes in South Africa is Piet Rampedi, the editor of the African Times. He joins us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Good morning, Piet, and thank you for joining us on the program. Piet, this case presents for the very first time in South Africa imprisonment for someone uttering racist comments. How important is this moment for not just country, but particularly any black person in South Africa that has been a victim of racial abuse? Piet.
If you consider the South African past of racism, colonialism, and apartheid, where black people were subjugated for many years by whites in this country, this case is a landmark case. It's a precedent-setting case because it is for the first time in the history of this country that a person who has been charged criminally and convicted for uttering racist slurs has been convicted and sentenced to a jail term. And in this case, we're talking about just a couple of weeks or months. We're talking a good 2-year effective jail sentence with 1 year suspended. So, considering our past year, this is presenting this case.
Now, I want you guys to notice a number of things. Her attorney's defense stated that she wasn't in her right mind. So I guess that's the South African way of claiming mental illness, which they do in the country. So that shows you how, regardless to where they're at, they're 100% always on code in terms of their narrative whenever you see these disgusting pork rinds committing some kind of crime or simply acting out their hateful nature, which is to try and disparage other people. Another thing I wanted you guys to notice that was happening out there that also tends to happen here in the States is she was disrespecting a police officer, okay? Now, we have seen several cases where you would have white women and white men verbally disrespecting black police officers in this country. So that shows you that there's no respect even when a black person is in a position of authority, and that's something that's also global. So as you notice, like a number of, this story is going, and this story is international at this point, but I think that this is particularly important for black people to look at. One of the things that stood out to me is that they said that the reason why they're putting a stiff sentence on it is because they're trying to send a stern message that this type of behavior will not be tolerated. That's how you know you're looking at a country of people who are really serious about racism versus a country like America that pretends to be serious about racism, but they do nothing about it. Those are things, though, that will need to be enforced and pushed by black people in this country. But unfortunately, in this country, you have a bunch of black people who are only interested in giving passes and coddling and making white supremacists feel comfortable with the white supremacy that they subject to black people that makes them extremely uncomfortable. What really needs to happen in this country is that black people need to make a big deal out of even things that you may think is small in terms of racism, because that's the only way that you can send a message that no racism, regardless to how small you might think it is or how small they might think it is, none of it is going to be tolerated. And that's what they're doing in South Africa. So according to CNN, it says a South African woman who hurled racist abuse at a black police officer in a clip that went viral has been sentenced to 3 years in prison with 1 year suspended. So that means she has to do 2 years in prison. And a lot of people will still be saying, oh, this is unfair, that's too lengthy, the crime doesn't fit the punishment. Keep in mind, they just sent a Black woman to prison for 4 years for voting while she was on probation. So it's interesting how this country, the government in this country, will try and talk negatively about the policies of other countries, when in reality they put in prison more Black people that were even in the slave trade. This shouldn't have even happened. Vicky Momberg was found guilty in November on 4 counts of criminal injury or the willful injury of someone's dignity. It was the first time a South African has received prison time for the offense. We've had criminal injury cases before, but they have always been coupled by other charges. This is the first for a prison sentence for criminal injury on its own. National Prosecuting Authority spokeswoman Finda, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, said. She said the court's punishment sets a precedent for future cases. We are pleased with the sentence. This sends a clear message to those who undermine other people's rights, okay? Momberg, a former state agent, was caught on video berating South African police service officers who had stopped to assist her after thieves broke into her car in Johannesburg. Now, understand that whites are not native to South Africa. I could care less what some delusional cave devils were in my comment section when they shouldn't even be looking at my video says. They're not native. So these are outsiders. The descendants of colonizers who went into South Africa, brutalizing the people to steal their land. That's who she's the descendant of. All of them are descendants of the former colonizers of South Africa who stole the land. So the reality of it is think how arrogant you have to be the descendant of somebody who stole land, be in a country that doesn't belong to you, and then disrespect not only the natives, but the Black police officers there. That's how vile and arrogant you have to be, and they should not in any way, shape, or form allow this behavior to continue. They shouldn't at all. Okay, and I'm glad that they're sending a message, but the reality is this is not going to curb behavior of the demonic South African cave devils any more than laws in America deterring the behavior of pork rinds in this country who sit up here and do all these things to Black people. But what Black people can do, regardless to what the law is doing, is hold them accountable. You can hold them accountable via lawsuits. You can cuss them back out. There's a number of different things that they can do. I personally will not tolerate any type of racism, and I don't care where I am. And the minute that a cave pork rind chooses to do that, they're going to get cussed out and probably sued too. Okay? She repeatedly used a highly offensive slur that was commonly used to insult and demean Black people during apartheid. So the slur that she used was to call them a Kaffir, which is the equivalent of a nigger, okay? Magistrate Pravina Rugondan denied Momberg bail after the sentencing in Johannesburg. Momberg's lawyers are expected to lodge an appeal next week. Minister of Justice and Correctional Service Michael Masuza welcomed the sentence and reiterated his department's commitment to fighting racially motivated crimes. We believe that this strong sentence will deter would-be hate crime perpetrators in our society. We also find it defeating and disappointing that we are dealing with the case of this nature in a year where we celebrate the year of Nelson Mandela, Masuza said. But again, so that's just like them saying they're celebrating MLK and Black History Month, and so it's the same thing. Now, like I said, young or old, male or female, foreign or domestic, it doesn't matter where they're at. They have the same mentality. They're on the same code globally. Black people really need to get with the codes. You can't not have a code. If a social media website or a mall can have a code of conduct, then why is it that Black people think that they don't need a code of conduct? We're the only group of people who think it's okay to just allow people to do whatever, all the while claiming we want racism to end. You can't have racism in if you're not willing to set consequences to racist behavior directed at you. So in this country, Black people are just as much to blame for white supremacy as these white supremacists are, because we're not giving them any consequences. The majority of us go out of our way to make them comfortable perpetuating racism, and we should never do that. We should never do that. So they said the prison sentence brings a clear warning that race-based abuse for which Momberg was found guilty will not be tolerated. The Nelson Mandela Foundation said Wednesday in a statement, it was not enough to act against incidents of racism and underlying privilege that caused racism in post-apartheid South Africa must be addressed, the nonprofit organization added. Momberg's sentence is significant for its severity, but not for the act itself. In 2016, a real estate agent, Penny Sparrow, was ordered to pay around $10,000 to charity after she was convicted of hate speech for a Facebook post in which she referred to blacks as monkeys, okay? So the thing of it is they do so much that black people allow them to get away with. And I'm glad that South Africa's government is saying that we're not going to tolerate that. You're going to sit up in one of these jails if you think you're going to run off at the mouth, calling people racist names. Now, they can choose to leave. And just like in America, although this isn't cavelings and pork rinds country, they like to tell people, okay, well, they can go back to Africa. So she needs to go back to a cave in Europe somewhere. If she doesn't like the government in South Africa, she shouldn't be there anyway. But you guys let me know what you think. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.